Well, hello and welcome everyone to my presentation on capital planning. Um, my name is Chris Santo, and I have been in the tech field and the tech industry for about 30 years. 20 of those years have been at the Central Arizona project. I was hired as an Oracle developer, and then I was in IT management, and now I'm back in the maintenance organization in their maintenance information systems group. I'm also a certified reliability leader, and I teach math, computer science, and data analytics at Scottsdale Community College in the Phoenix area. So I guess just a question for all of you. How many have ever heard of capital planning? There's a screen in EAM called capital planning. Do you use it? Yes. So three of you heard of it. Do you use it now, or are you just trying to get more information? Yes. Yeah, you use it. Okay. All right, great. Well, that's good to know. Well, first thing that I want to kind of talk about is tell you about a little bit about the Central Arizona Project. Tell you what we do. Being here on the East Coast, maybe you've never heard of us, but we are a 336-mile water aqueduct. We deliver water to the Phoenix and Tucson area. We have about 80 customers. So we are kind of a wholesaler of water. You can kind of think of it that way. Our customers are the municipalities in Phoenix and Tucson and very large water users. The Salt River Project is our customer, for instance, and then they deliver to residential homes there in Phoenix. The Central Arizona Project was built over a 20-year period. We were financed by the federal government. The Bureau of Reclamation was heavily involved in our building and the engineering. And our system was substantially complete in 1993. So again, it started in the late 70s, and we were done in 1993. So some of our issues, we're an aging system. Most of our permanently installed assets are more than 30 years old. So we are managing that. So there's an increase in the number of capital projects for replacement in kind and kind of bringing various systems up to date. And we are we're kind of a big deal in Arizona. We do deliver water to 80% of Arizona residents. The map may not look like it, but most of our population is in Phoenix and Tucson. Just talking a little bit more about the system, there's 14 pumping plants that lift water nearly 3,000 feet. So you could see from the map, we were delivering water from the west part of Arizona where the Colorado River is, and then we take it to the central part. Well, that's uphill most of the way. Our system contains 10 siphons, which are basically underground pipelines, and 4 tunnels. We also have the Lake Pleasant Storage Reservoir, which is about 20 or 30 miles north of the Phoenix area. And that allows us to kind of store water. We can control our pumping to pump when the electric rates are a little bit lower, so we can store some water and then drain the lake when it suits us for the electrical rates and so forth. So this is our maintenance management dashboard. We have 109 pumping units across those 14 pumping plants, and that the Waddell pump station is kind of pumping plant number 15. So we have 109 pumping units across those plants. The Mark Wilmer pumping plant, which is at the beginning of our system, is our largest and most important pumping plant. There are 6 pump units in Mark Wilmer pumping plant. The plant is 7 stories, and those pump units are 7 stories deep, if you will. The pumping plant kind of goes underground. These 6 units are 66,000 horsepower each, and they pump water more than 800 feet over Buckskin Mountain behind the pumping plant. So pretty big. If you know a thing or two about the size of pump units, those are some pretty big units. Just to give you a frame of reference, with all 6 pumps running at Mark Wilmer Pumping Plant, an Olympic-sized swimming pool could be filled in 23 seconds. So a lot of volume going through there. So that's a brief overview of the CAP. Let's talk about our budgeting process. We're talking about capital planning after all, so why are we doing this? So we have a biannual budgeting process, which is we create a budget over 2 years. And how this starts, and again, this is kind of at a high level, but I want to give you an idea, why do we even care about capital planning? But the CAP's fiscal year aligns with the calendar year, and we begin the preparation of this every 2-year budget as part of our financial process. We prepare the budget internally. It involves almost everybody in the district, every supervisor, every manager, almost everybody's involved in the budgeting process. And this takes about 4 or 5 months for us to put together. This budget is reviewed with all of our customers and our stakeholders, and typically the municipal and industrial and tribal and agricultural customers. Those roughly 3 groups of customers comprise all of our customers at the CAP. This budget is reviewed individually by members of the board of directors. And then finally, the subset of the board called the Finance, Audit, and Power Committee formally approve the budget, and then it's presented to the board for approval. And again, this happens every 2 years. Now, once this budget is approved, this drives the water rates that our customers pay. And our water rates are acre feet. So we sell water by the acre foot, not by the gallon. And an acre foot is exactly what it sounds like. It's enough water to flood an acre foot deep. It's roughly 320,000 gallons of water. And the water rates, we provide an advisory water rate. So this is a screenshot from our website, and we try to provide our customers a little bit of information about what we expect water rates to be in the future. This water rate has a capital component. It's about 20% of the water rate. So it's important that we kind of get this number right, okay? Our processes need to do that. So how did we do capital planning? Before we used Hexagon EAM for capital planning, how did we do it? What was the old way? Well, there were all of these side sheets. All of our maintenance departments had spreadsheets. They had pet projects, different projects that they put together, and they were slung around and informally tracked, tracked in different ways in the different maintenance areas. There was also a SharePoint list that was created by a planner. He was called a rogue by some organizations. He created a SharePoint list, and he called this the risk register. And as you can imagine, the priorities of those projects were different than the ones on the spreadsheet. So there was a lot of conflict. So now we're up to like 4 or 5 different spreadsheets tracking capital projects. And then we had our engineers, our reliability engineers, our maintenance engineers. The loudest ones, the most outspoken engineers would often get capital projects approved, right? So politicking, different conversations would drive the priorities of these projects. So kind of a problem, right? Over time, in the early years, finance just lacked confidence in the way that we were putting together the capital projects, right? They could see they were getting different stories from different departments, which project is more important than the other project. And after a while, finance would just pick a number to put in that water rate, and then we just had to adhere to that number when the budget came. So that's kind of the wrong way to do it. Finance was telling us how much to spend on capital projects instead of the maintenance organization of the engineers telling our customers, hey, this is what you need if you want a reliable system. And there's this guy. We called him Uncle Gary. I don't know if Gary actually knew we called him Uncle Gary, but Gary would go around like Santa Claus, and he would pop into offices randomly and say, hey, what projects you got going on? Anything breaking down? Anything I need to put into the long-range plan? And he had this mysterious long-range planning spreadsheet, and he would just throw numbers in there and title projects, and often projects would get in there more than once. Not at all. What about the side sheets? What about the SharePoint list? It was just a nightmare trying to stitch all of this together. All right, so that was the old way. So well, we've been a long-time EAM customer. We've had EAM since DataStream was out in 2001. We survived the Infor acquisition. We're surviving the Hexagon acquisition okay. And we learned that EAM, the EAM product, had capital planning functionality in about 2018. our rogue maintenance planner actually identified it and called it out for us. So, okay, let's evaluate this thing. Let's implement it. Let's try to do it. We took a look at it and we said, okay, this thing has wings. So before we go off and implement it, let's set some goals. And these goals were set with our maintenance control manager, with our engineering manager, and just key folks in management at CAP. So goal number one is you want to bring in all of these side sheets. We want to minimize the influence of Uncle Gary. We want to kind of pull in this stuff off of the risk register, and we want to centralize all of our capital planning in EAM. Goal number two is we wanted to create a transparent, risk-based priority model for our capital projects. We didn't just want the loudest engineer to get his or her projects approved, right? We wanted to have some transparent process that would allow us to prioritize these things with some kind of logic. And goal number three, we wanted to empower anyone in the company to be able to enter concepts. These concepts can be reviewed. Anybody in the company can have an idea for a project, and it can be reviewed by our project team, our capital planning team, to determine if it needs to be done, if it needs to be included in the budget. And we wanted to standardize this budget review process. Again, remember all those side sheets and all the things that came in from different places. There was no standardization of that process, so we wanted to standardize the process. And then finally, goal number four is once we get all of this stuff into one system, we wanted a single report that we could hand over to finance and say, this is our capital plan. Okay, and so they're giving me all these goals. I'm collecting all of these goals. But on my first slide, I didn't really read it to you, but I came to CAP as a finance programmer. So I developed in their Oracle e-business suite system, so I have a little bit of an accounting background. I said, hey, maybe, I mean, this might be a high ask, but maybe we can use this tool for operational budgeting too. So not only can it do capital planning, but if I throw some extra things in here, maybe we can use it for operational budgeting too, because that was an array of side sheets, 30 or 40 side sheets that we were stitching together to try to build that budget. All right, so great. So now we're off to implementation. We have the goals set. I have my wish list, my wish goal set. Let's start implementing. So the first thing that I had to do is we had to decide what all do we want to track on a capital planning request. And as you can imagine, all the managers had different ideas, right? There are probably about 100 fields they wanted to track on a capital planning request. Well, if you make these things too difficult, users aren't going to enter them, or you're going to get incomplete information. So it was a little bit of back and forth trying to figure out what fields we should actually track. And so I built a spreadsheet and we listed all these fields, and some fields that we thought maybe were marginal, we got rid of. Less is more, right? So we tried to get it down to as few fields as possible. These fields were mapped to one of the tabs. So capital planning requests, the screen out of the box has a record view tab, and of course comments and documents like all of the screens have in EAM. But there were some things that we weren't able to put on the record view. And I don't remember, we needed to create another tab called details because there were some long text fields that we needed, and there just weren't enough text fields on the record view for us to use. So we actually created a custom tab for details to include that information. We also added a custom tab for budget. So to provide budget information, we created a custom tab for that. Okay, so that was step one. Step two, we also had to determine like the workflow and approval process. Remember, we had to have a standardized process for budgeting. That was one of our goals. So with the team, we created this workflow process. This is just a screenshot from the spreadsheet. I wanted to show you some of the early artifacts that we created when we were putting this together. I thought showing you the easy things that you could put a workflow process in an Excel spreadsheet and start there, that can get you started faster. You don't need a Visio document to create a process, right? So these were all the different statuses. And as you can see, I've got the system status code and status code as they are in EAM. Also notice on the left side, there are old risk register statuses. So one thing that the SharePoint list had was some higher level statuses that we used to kind of guide the process along. So we had these high level statuses, but then we had some intermediate statuses that we actually configured in EAM. Another tip or another thing that I realized we needed to do early on is to manage issues. So we were having a lot of conversations with different managers and different people about this process. And so we had to track all of the conversations, whether the issue was resolved, what are we going to do about that conversation, and so on. So we had to track all of that. So I tracked that in the same spreadsheet with the fields. Another thing is once it was time to configure the workflow, there were a ton of status authorizations, right? Certain user groups could move from one status to another, but we didn't want other user groups to move from one status to another. So we did that in the spreadsheet, and we used the upload utility, the import utility, whatever it's called, to be able to upload the status authorizations. There were over 150 status authorizations. I was keying them in manually for a while, and then I found out I was taking hours to manage these things, and the import utility helped us with that. Okay, so let's actually take a look at the screen. So I've got some screenshots here of the finished product of capital budgeting request. And the first thing that you notice is that we renamed the form. So it doesn't have to be called capital budgeting. You can rename the form through some setups in Infor. Management wanted to call this the concept request form, right? Because it's a concept. It may not be a capital project. It may just be extraordinary maintenance, or it may be something else. Accounting decides whether it's a capital project or not. But if it's any kind of effort that we have to do, management wanted this to be a concept request, or in the concept request form. You'll notice down the left, and this is the split view. So you notice down the left side that some of my concepts have 3-digit numbers, and others had 5-digit numbers. So since we implemented this kind of while there were projects in flight, we had to import these in-flight concepts from the risk register and all the side sheets. So we brought them in, and we brought them in using the 3-digit numbers, and then we started the system using 5-digit numbers. So if you enter the concept in EAM, we had a 5-digit number. We changed the sequence in the database to do that. Another thing that we did, remember there's a mapping between the status and those phases. We used a flex SQL to handle that. So whatever, there's always a one-to-one mapping between well, not a one-to-one mapping, but each status is connected to a specific phase. So we were able to create a flex SQL to update the phase. You might, I don't know if you can see it here, but the status field is able to be changed, but the phase is a read-only phase, read-only field. One of the workflows require what we call SAM team approval, and our SAM teams are strategic asset management teams. We have 3 of those. We have the civil, electrical, and mechanical teams, and they review certain kinds of most asset modifications the engineers review. And so we've got some workflow steps for that. We have 8 different concept types that are used for different purposes. Again, there's obvious ones like asset modification, maybe an overhaul, but there's other things like replacement in kind, a capital budget request, or a budget request. All of these concept types have different workflows. They end up in different inboxes depending on which type is used. Here in the record view, we've got fields for labor hours and total cost. These are read-only fields, but they're updated by Flex. I haven't showed you this yet, but the budget tab is going to allow you to enter multiple lines for the budget. And so this Flex SQL aggregates all of the budget lines and puts the number here in the record view for easy viewing. Another thing, remember, one of our goals was to have a transparent risk-based process, prioritization process for our projects. So we have fields like consequence of failure, probability of failure. These are coming right out of the RCM. So we have those, and there's different levels. These levels are defined formally in an instruction document that I'll talk about in a minute. What's the difference between moderate and serious, for instance? Well, that's all defined in the instructions. There's also equipment condition and obsolescence risk. So obsolescence risk has to do with whether or not we have more than 5 years or less than 2 years of time with the asset. And then the equipment condition, we have a condition assessment process that actually assigns letter grades to our critical systems. And so the equipment condition is entered here as well. We also have these two, this was from the engineering group. We have two scores called RPN and PPN. I have PPM here, but it's PPN. RPN is risk priority number, which is the likelihood and consequence of a failure. And then the PPN is the project priority number. I like to think of the PPN as the political priority number to some degree. So that gives our management a little bit of leeway to plug a number in there. If something has to be done and maybe the risk isn't there, they have the opportunity to increase that number. There's also a create work order button, so you can click a button and you can attach a capital planning request to a work order. CAP is a work order centric cost model, so all of our costs in the entire organization are tied back to a work order. Even if it's a non-maintenance department, we have overhead work orders for all of our departments. And so if there's a capital project, we can tie them together with this create work order button functionality that's provided by EAM. Here's that instruction document. So another Flex SQL, every time a concept request form is created, this document is attached. So we just have the document once in the system, but we just attach the same instruction document to every concept request form as it's created. This way, people that enter a concept request form can look at this document, and this provides all the instructions about the obsolescence and all of those different categories that you put in. It talks a little bit about the workflow. It's a multi-page document that basically provides instructions on how to use it. Here's that details form. So again, there weren't enough fields on the record view for us to provide the detail or allow our users to add enough detail for our concept request form. So we did have to add a details form. A custom tab allows you to add these free format text fields that are longer fields. And unfortunately, a custom tab only it uses a master slave or record view and detail kind of thing. So we had to create a flex to only allow one line of detail to be added. So that was the only way we could get around this. But our users enter all of the detail, things like problem definition, problem impact, corrective action. There's some other fields there that provide a lot of detail about the concept. And then here's the budget tab. So the budget tab, the cool thing about this is it can be as simple or as detailed as you want it to be. You can add one line of budget detail, say that it's going to be in 2020 or maybe a future year, 2026. And you can put all of the dollar amount on one line here, or you can build a quarterly budget here by just adding multiple detail lines. Again, the flex just summarizes all of this, puts the labor hours, puts all of the dollars on the record view. So, and this is kind of where my goal, this is where I slid in some extra things. They didn't, maintenance and engineering management didn't really want this, but I added things like quarter, cost center, account, these kinds of details, because I thought just by adding those fields, maybe we could do more. Maybe we could put the operational budgets in here. Here's a screenshot of the status authorizations, or no, this is the system codes for the statuses, and this is where we've configured all of those system codes. I don't think I want to say anything else about that. And we know about status authorizations. So here's those status authorizations. Again, I told you there were 150 of them. So these are different user groups that are allowed to move these capital planning requests from one status to another status. So this was a little tricky to do, right? The status authorizations can get pretty hairy. But like I said, we used a spreadsheet to manage that. And then one of the requirements that popped up along the way is, hey, we want to print this. They always want to print it. I'm not really sure why, but they always want to print these forms. Well, EAM out of the box, for whatever reason, the print icon didn't work in this screen. So my friends at Stratum, helped with some extensible framework, and I say we were able to hijack the functionality of the print icon and run a Cognos report. So we had an extensible framework that grabbed the concept request form ID and then passed it to a Cognos report. And so we were able to do that pretty easily. They had some code that did that pretty much out of the box. And there's their website in case you don't know it. All right, remember that one report? I think it's in the title or in the description, right? You got one form and one report. So we created a Power BI report that summarizes all of these concept request forms. And here's that RPN number. My engineering manager likes to use the risk priority number, and here it's sorted from highest to lowest, highest being a higher risk, and of course lower numbers being a lower risk. And so he's able to sort by that number. And then with the information that's added in the budget tab, the dollar amounts are put there in the appropriate column, and he's got the 10-year plan. As long as everybody's entered the concept request form in the budget tab properly, he's got a 10-year plan with just this one report. Now, we have two different kinds of capital projects. We have capital projects that are handled by our engineering services group, and then we have capital projects that are handled by our maintenance group. And the way you can think about that is engineering services are kind of our implementation team. They're building new things, and maintenance is kind of maintaining or bringing the existing systems back to spec. So we had a button up here called engineering projects. My engineering manager wanted to click one button. He wanted to see everything in his group. So that was filtered by the engineering departments, and he calls that the easy button. He calls me on the phone every once in a while. Oh, this easy button's great. I just run the report. I click the easy button and I see my 10-year plan for my department. So he just loves that thing. Ah, there's the easy button, right. Okay. Now, we have several flex business rules that we've coded in here. I only have an hour. I probably talk for hours about what all the different flex business rules do. But they are implemented to ensure that our users are entering the fields that they need to enter. You can't enter a concept request form with no problem description field. Right before you send it on to the next status request, the next status level, you have to put some information in there. So there's a lot of fields, or there's a lot of Flex SQL in there that kind of just enforces that sort of stuff. Our SAM team, what we found out is when a concept request was getting routed to our SAM team, they were just rubber stamping it and sending it along and not providing any comments. So we were able to add a Flex SQL to say, well, if it goes to SAM team review, you got to add at least one comment before you can go. Now, sometimes the comment is just period and then save, and then that's it. But at least they added a comment, right? So we were able to do things like that with our Flex SQL. I also want to point out that you can also put Flex SQL on the tables that are created by those detail tabs as well. So when you create a detail tab, it creates a separate table in the database, and you can put a Flex on those. And there are reasons to do that. One of them was to summarize the budget and update the record view with the budget information. All right, so that was it. That was the implementation at a high level. Obviously, it takes me a little bit longer than 15 or 20 minutes to explain it. But if you have any questions, reach out to me, and I'm happy to provide more detail. So what happened? Great. So we implemented capital planning in 2020. We went through a couple of 2-year budget cycles. Now it's 2025. I'm doing this presentation. I checked in to see how we were doing. Now I'm the tech guy. I implemented the thing, and now I'm called when it's broken, but I don't really know how well it did. So I went back and interviewed them in January, and I went back to our goals. Let's see how we did with our goals. So remember, goal number one was to centralize all capital planning in EAM and eliminate all of those rogue lists and side sheets. Well, we did it. All the capital projects for our next biennial budget in 2026 and 2027 are in the system, and they are all concept requests. So I think that's successful. There's no capital projects that are like off the sheet. Goal number two, we wanted to create a transparent risk-based priority model for our capital projects, and I'm proud to say that this was also successful. I mean, I say no more outspoken engineers, managers, planners, IT people. I say no. There still are those people, but the report speaks for itself, right? These concept requests are reviewed by management. If you make something a critical concept, you better be prepared to defend that rating, right? So there are fewer of that. These capital projects, as I said, are formally reviewed quarterly by the managers. And as I said, if you rate it high impact, you better be ready to defend that rating. Goal three, empower anybody in the company to enter concepts and to have them go through the budget review process. We're standardizing the budget review process. Absolutely, our reliability engineers are entering concepts. Our implementation engineers are doing it. Maintenance technicians, all kinds of folks from maintenance and engineering are entering and using the concept request form and having their projects reviewed. Even fleet, when we get new vehicles, they have to enter concept request forms in order to get a replacement for a vehicle, a crane, or a truck or something. Goal four, have that single report that shows all approved capital projects over the 10-year long-term horizon. And we did that in Power BI using the 10-year look ahead. And we have that easy button that our engineering manager just loves. Great. And by the way, remember my goal, the operational budgeting? Could we get that in there too? Well, yes, they did it. So you saw the budget request type, and all of the maintenance divisions are entering their operational budgets as concept requests. They look a little funny, right? They're like, oh, parts, and then they have, just a number with the parts account and everything in there, but they are able to do that, and through a similar report, our managers are able to aggregate all of their budgets for their divisions in their area and be able to create an operational budget. So this is happening right now, and that's working pretty well. Here's a quote from our accounting manager. He said, maintenance and engineering are the model of the organization for capital planning and budgeting. They went from the worst to the best over 2 budget cycles. So EAM just completely turned everything upside down. It turned our reputation upside down, and now we're a model of the organization. That's high praise. This guy doesn't, he's an accountant, okay? He doesn't give out high praise very often. And when I heard he said this, I asked him if I could quote him, and he's like, yeah, whatever. But he did say this, and that is high praise. Oh, we forgot somebody. Uncle Gary. He retired as we were doing this, so he's happy too. All right, so that's all I have on capital projects. We have a little maintenance information systems team at the CAP, and we're doing a bunch of things. Capital projects is one of them, but we're doing a number of other things. We've configured the reservation screen to manage our outage reservations when we have systems that are out and they're under maintenance. We use that for that. We have a mobile project that is slowly getting off the ground. A lot of arm wrestling with IT and security and which platform we're allowed to use. But that is getting off the ground. I think we have 25 or 30 users of it right now. We also have other custom screens and forms that we're developing for protected device settings change form, industrial control system change forms. Because we're not using mobile, we still have some paper work order packages, and those work order packages need to be scanned and attached to work orders. We've got a integration between our multifunction copiers and scanners, and it automatically character recognizes and attaches the scanned document to EAM. So those multifunction devices are out in the plants, and folks can just put their work order package there and scan to Infor, and the system automatically attaches it. We still maintain something called BAME. I don't know if anybody in here has ever heard of BAME. BAME is a 2006 and before legacy integration between EAM and Oracle E-Business Suite. Infor dropped it as soon as they bought DataStream, but we kept the code, and we are still maintaining that. We're trying to use activity scheduling. So on our work orders, we have daily schedules, and we're trying to get away from daily schedules and do activity scheduling. So a lot of reporting there. We have that maintenance management dashboard that I showed you. It's an operational dashboard on a budget. We did that. And we've got an on-premise Power BI report server. And we've done some machine learning projects using Python and Jupyter notebooks with some of our machine data. So we're doing a lot of work there. And if you want to talk about any of these projects, please reach out to me. But other than that, anyone have any questions about it?